7 months. If you're a solo developer spending $80 a month on cloud APIs, 7 months is the exact amount of time it takes for a local GPU to completely pay for itself. Welcome to This Explainer. We're putting the 2026 local versus cloud LLM debate under a microscope. This isn't some philosophical argument about open source or AI sovereignty. We're builders. We care about the strict math, so we're doing a pure, numbers-first breakdown.
Right, 7 months. That's your magic number. If you pick up a used GPU right now, you cross the break-even point in just over half a year. After that, your inference is essentially free, outside of electricity.
It really all centers on this $80 a month threshold. When your cloud spend hits $80, renting compute officially flips from a convenience to an ongoing liability. If you're below that line, stick with the cloud. If you're above it, making the hardware swap makes objective financial sense. So what are the exact pricing and latency numbers driving founders to actually pull the plug on cloud APIs?
Section 1, the API cost reality and how token costs actually compound. You've got to look at the financial drain of relying heavily on hosted APIs for your daily coding. The real killer here is the massive premium they charge for output tokens. Look at GPT-5. OpenAI charges $10 per million input tokens, but an absolutely wild $30 per million output tokens. Claude Opus 4.6 sits at $5 for input and $25 for output. DeepSeek v3.2 is the extreme outlier at just 14 cents and 28 cents. But for developers relying on coding assistants that spit out massive blocks of code all day, those premium output tokens from standard providers compound aggressively. It adds up so fast. Put that into perspective for a solo developer with moderate usage. We're talking maybe 20 million input tokens and 10 million output tokens a month. If you rely on GPT 4.1, you're paying $120. Claude Sonnet 4 will run you $105. DeepSeek is incredibly cheap at $5.60, but you've got to deal with known trade-offs like severe rate limits. So most developers are just eating a recurring $100 to $120 bill every single month.
Then you have the latency tax. Cloud APIs usually eat up 200 plus milliseconds just for the network round trip. That's before it even generates a single token. Local deployment completely eliminates that network overhead. You bring inference latency down to under 50 milliseconds. For real-time applications or just keeping your own flow state while coding, that speed difference is impossible to ignore.
Section 2, where local LLMs lose and the hidden casses of self-hosting. We need to be brutally honest here. Self-hosting isn't free of friction. There are heavy, unadvertised costs to managing your own AI hardware. You're absolutely going to sacrifice 5 to 10 hours a month on maintenance, tweaking model updates, and troubleshooting driver issues. You also have to accept a 10 to 20% drop in raw reasoning capability compared to frontier models like GPT-4o. Plus, you have to factor in added power consumption and some very real throughput limits. The throughput limit is the real bottleneck. If you run a large 70 billion parameter model in consumer hardware, your tokens per second tops out around 35. That's noticeably slower than the 80 to 150 tokens per second you get from a cloud API. You're absolutely going to feel that sluggishness when you're waiting on long text generations. When you crunch the amortized costs, the margins are remarkably tight. Say you buy an RTX 4090 and run it 12 hours a day. Between hardware amortization and the electricity bill, your true cost is about $94 a month. Compare that to the $100 to $120 you spend on a moderate cloud API habit. It's closer than people think. Section 3, the break-even framework and when to definitively make the switch.
Here's the hard token volume threshold you need to memorize. If your workflow uses under 50 million tokens a month, stick with cloud APIs. Seriously, the maintenance tax of local hardware just isn't worth it for that volume. But if you're clearing 100 million monthly tokens, you must transition to self-hosted hardware. The API fees just scale far too aggressively beyond that point. Your hardware choice is what ultimately dictates your timeline here. A used RTX 3090 costs roughly $699. Compared to Claude Sonnet APIs, it pays for itself in exactly 6.7 months. Upgrading to an RTX 4090 extends that horizon to 15.2 months. And if you go all out on a flagship RTX 5090, it pushes your break-even point all the way out to 19 months. Section 4, Hardware and Tooling Setup, the 2026 Minimal Viable Stack. If you're making the switch, here's your specific path to deployment. Step 1, acquire a used RTX 3090 with 24 gigabytes of VRAM. Step 2, install Ollama for simplified model management. Step 3, Load up a quantized GGUF model like Llama 3.1 8B or Qwen 2.5. This entire setup takes maybe 30 minutes and effortlessly handles 90% of your daily coding tasks. We've got some incredibly optimized edge models right now that fit perfectly into that 24 gigabytes of VRAM. Llama 3.1 8B Instruct delivers true enterprise-level reliability. THDM GLM4 9B is frankly exceptional for code generation and function calling. And Qwen 2.5 VL 7B brings cutting-edge vision and multimodal capabilities right to your desktop.
Now, if you absolutely refuse to build a PC, there's the Apple alternative. A Mac Studio M3 Ultra with 128 gigabytes of unified memory costs $3,999. Because it leverages that unified memory architecture, it can actually run massive 120 billion parameter models locally. It requires a steep upfront investment, sure, but it removes literally all the GPU configuration friction. So I want you to pull up your current monthly Stripe bill for API access right now. Find the exact dollar amount you spent over the last 30 days. This single number dictates your next move as a developer. Here's the final verdict. If your API spend is below $80 a month, the hidden maintenance taxes of local hardware mean it's simply not worth your time. Stick to the cloud. But if your bill sits above $80, go buy a used RTX 3090. The hardware swap makes immediate financial sense. Ask yourself right now, is your current cloud architecture actually a necessity, or is it just an expensive habit?